Welcome to Imperfect Momming. Our children are constantly looking to us for examples. The term role model doesn't quite cut it here. We are shaping their worldview with every move we make. You see, it's not in the lectures we give or moments where we are actively attempting to teach them. It's in the micro movements we make, the unconscious ways in which we navigate life. We are constantly teaching our children how to show up for themselves, their friends, their future partners, and even their future children. So what can we do to ensure we are raising thoughtful, compassionate, self-aware human beings? We have to become them ourselves. No one is perfect, but we can still all be better, and it starts with self-healing. Let's get to it. Welcome back to Imperfect Momming, and we have a very special guest today, Michelle Mintz. Welcome to Imperfect Momming.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
You're welcome. Tell us who you are and what do you do?
So I am Michelle Mitz, the early development expert from Baby Blooming Moments. My background is I've been a speech and language pathologist for over 25 years. And I specialize working with children in the birth to 3 population and helping their families with growing their vocabulary and helping with their speech delays and anything that's going on. So after 25 years, I thought, my strategies are really good for communication. So it's not just about speech delay, it's all about communicating. And so I've created Baby Blooming Moments so I can share and coach my strategies with all parents, all grandparents, even in nannies and daycare providers, to be able to use my strategies to help with communication, learning how infants communicate differently than a 2-year-old, how you're going to respond differently, and different strategies to help with the neurons and the nerves that still need to develop during these critical years. So we need to make the most of these years. So I share and coach my strategies virtually as well as in person to make the most of these critical years and really have parents and people know what it is to do other than diapering and feeding and bathing and the basics of caring for the child. Then how do we engage with them and enrich their language and their communication in their brain?
Yeah, I'm thinking back to when my son was between 0 and 3, and he's going to be 11 tomorrow.
Okay.
But I had he he had some speech delays where he had like 1 word, 2 words maybe. His word was ungi, which
Which
meant
meant
I want that. But I thought it was hungry. And so
yeah.
every time he would say ungi, I would try to feed him and he wouldn't want to eat. And I was like, I'm so confused what's happening. And uh it, my brother was the one that figured out that ungi meant I want that. And I was like, oh my gosh, that was so helpful to know because I stopped trying to just give him food
Yeah.
constantly. My son was
Miscommunication
Mhm.
created so much
Yeah.
stress and tension and frustration on both your part and his part. And every time he said it, and I could just imagine. So yeah, communication is so key to being able to connect.
And my favorite story, and then we'll talk more about how you help moms because this is my
Yes.
when he once he did get more words and he would try to get me out of bed sometimes. This was way before I was into personal development and having a morning routine and getting up before him. And he was trying to get me
Yes.
out of bed. And I don't remember what he would say to get me out of bed, but I wouldn't get out of bed. And so then he'd say pancake because he knew that if he asked for pancakes, I would get out of bed. And he wouldn't eat the pancakes. He didn't care about the pancakes. He just wanted me to get out of bed. And he did that 3 times before I figured it out.
Ungi took longer, but
Yes, no, those are such perfect examples. And you're describing your child who did have a speech delay, and so he did have difficulty producing words to get that out. And that is exactly why somebody like you would need help and strategies and trying to help what to do. In addition, there are children who, without being categorized as having a speech development problem, just in communication. And so that's where I'm helping moms, is that, okay, give me that example and let me see where we can go with it, and how we can help. Because once that problem is solved, then like you're moving on, and it's communication is so important at every age, starting from birth. And that's why I give strategies, because you want to connect with that newborn. You want to get eye contact. You want to get their attention in different ways. And so my strategies is teaching all about that. And so my favorite strategy, which I will teach right now, I will give you, because it's great for everybody. It is about eye contact, which makes eye contact, because as I'm even having a conversation with you right now, I'm actually really wanting to look at you, which is down here.
Right.
Then I can see you, and I can see your face and your facial expressions. And now I feel I have eye contact with you, but I'm not looking then at the camera, which needs to be up here. So this whole thing throws me, because eye contact is so important. So I'm looking here like this, but so the proper socially appropriate conversation is you have eye contact with somebody. So from right at birth, or if they're on a bottle or whatever they want, is you're going to take that object that they want and you're going to put it by your eyes. It's the simplest strategy, but it works, because wherever the object is of what they want, whether it's their bottle, maybe it's a toy cow later on, maybe it's a car or a book, or when they're 11 or 12 or 13 and they want their cell phone, okay, that object is what they're looking at. You want them to look at you, bring that right here. Your 13-year-old is now going to give you eye contact, and you've got that. Because a lot of times when we say, look at me when I'm talking to you, or, where's my eyes? Okay. So by doing this, it's very easy to shift from the object to your eyes. And then, oh, you want your bottle? Okay. And you got a smile, you got a connection. You've actually made a nerve connection in the brain, which we need. And then you can give the bottle. And then you've had a moment together, other than just, here's your bottle.
Yeah.
And so eye contact can be used right from birth. I love it with toddlers, okay, because they will just look at what that is and boom, you've got it right there. Okay. So huge strategy, so simple to do. You can implement it throughout your day easily. You're not like having to take time in your day. That's what baby blooming moments is all about. Little tweaks of what you're already doing that's going to make a huge difference in your relationship, the connection, brain connections, and your baby's development.
I would love to rewind time. And I mean, 0 to 6 months was my favorite time until like now as a parent, but I loved that first 6 months. But what I was told, or what I learned wherever I picked it up was don't do baby talk with babies. So I always talked to him like he was an adult. And I actually believe that that's part of why he had the speech delays, because I was talking to him like an adult instead of shorter sentences, not baby talk, but shorter sentences. Because once he went into speech, he literally, like, we did the flashcards, here's a ball and keys, and like 80% of the pictures
he knew.
But he wasn't using those words with me, because I was just, talking to him like I talk to you.
Right. So I think, and that's a really, that I love that you brought that point up, because there's a difference between baby talk and slowing down and using shorter phrases. So when they say don't talk baby talk, what I think about is you know, and there's and not real words, and you're just
Right.
them. That
Yeah.
to me is what baby talk is. Oh, you want your little body. Okay.
Mhm.
And that we don't want to do.
Right.
But that's different than bottle.
Well, mhm,
Oh, you're hungry. Here's your bottle. Okay.
mhm. Yeah.
So, oh, I have a blue car.
Mm,
You want the blue car? Blue car. Okay. That's not baby talk.
right.
That's a so when they say to talk like adults, if you do this, hey, I have a blue car. Do you want the blue car? To the 6-month-old, forget it.
Right.
That's too much. So there has to be, you have to find that. So baby talks over here, adult talks over here. We need to find that happy medium of where that is. So I'm really glad you pointed that out, because no, we don't want that. I mean, you can uchiki kuchiki them, of course, especially when they're newborns, of course. You got, blah, blah, blah. But we want this other too. We want a lot of labeling of objects. So that's interesting that your son, so you're knowing all the objects. So what that tells me is that he was absorbing receptively. He was
Mhm.
understanding as you were naming things or picking that up, but to expressively use them on his own was a different story, because the talking, because like the way we're talking right now, adults talk so fast, grown-ups talk fast, and we understand each other. So right now I'm actually talking at a regular rate. This is how I would talk to anybody, but I wouldn't talk like this to somebody, to even a child that without a speech delay. This is too fast for them. In fact, a lot of nursery rhymes and CDs and things that you get, that CDs, listen to me, I'm okay, wherever you're listening to your music and your nursery rhymes, okay. I feel like a lot of the songs are too fast. Oh, McDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O. That's how we would sing it, and that's how they could listen to it. But if we want them to really absorb and even participate when they're like 12 months, 18 months, okay, we need to slow it down a lot. So it's slowing down to their rate, because what happens is, and I've got a couple of kids that I'm working with now, they're talking so fast that we can't understand their speech, because what we model is fast talking. So they think that we have to talk like this. So they're trying to talk like this, but they can't hit all their sounds the way that we can. So it's getting mumbled and we can't understand them. So what I need to do is I need to model slowing down and speaking more like this, which I'll tell you feels like I'm talking like a snail. It's painful to speak so slowly.
Yeah.
But I don't think it sounds that slow to the listener, even though it feels really slow to me. But this is how we need to, and so, because we are in a rush all the time, we are fast paced. So that's another strategy in itself, is just slowing down and thinking about using, more simple language. Doesn't have to mean baby talk though.
Right. Yeah. No, I recognize that. I recognized it immediately as soon as the speech therapist was given the flashcards, and that he recognized all of those, and he was able to say all of the things. There was a couple of them where instead of using the word, he would first say "nana," and then she'd say and he'd correct it, whatever it was. I have it on video, so it's like not even my memory remembering it a certain way. I have it on film. But as soon as all of that went down, I was like, I bet I was just talking too fast.
So did this, when you say that, then, because what I like to do is, this is why Baby Blooming Moments was born, is that, of course, I love working directly with the children, but in all of I actually work out of my home office. I always have the parent or whoever's brought them in the therapy room with me, because I'm teaching that parent always. What am I doing? Why am I doing this? Because I want that parent to go and do that at home. Because I only see your child for half an hour or 45 minutes once or twice a week. I need the parent to follow through so that we see the progress. So it's all in the education and training and coaching of the parent. And that's where I found more of my joy almost and that's why baby blooming moments came, because I want to coach, and I do coach parents, even virtually. I'm grabbing moments. Okay, so wait, don't give him that spoonful of food. I want you to wait, hold on to it, because what he's going to do is look up, where's my spoon? You've got your eye contact. Oh, you want more? Here's more. And then you have that moment. So that's what I'm grabbing, of, again, slowing it down and grabbing moments for connections, because it's so very, very important. And that's where my joy is coaching the parents, and then having that next session and getting examples of where they put that strategy in. And again, it's implemented. You're already diapering, you're already feeding, you're already bathing. So doing these little things, holding that diaper up by your eyes before you put it on, little things is going to just make a huge difference. So coaching the parents, grandparents sometimes don't know what to do, or, knew what to do when their little one was that, but there's so much more that can be done. And then you feel so fulfilled when you get that response back and that smile. So, so that's where my joy comes in. And I found that I want to share it with so many people. And how can I do that? And baby blooming moments came about.
Yeah, and I love the name of your business too. It's behind you. I read it. I was like, oh, that's cute. So I love that, and I love that you followed your passion with wanting to help the adults, the parents, the grandparents, the daycares. Like I could just imagine, how much you're helping, and neurologically there's benefits to the eye contact and to the stuff that you teach.
Absolutely. We get eye contact, and then we've actually increased attention too. If you think about it, if I just give the baby the bottle or the car or whatever that is, but then that's one, less than a second, right? If I'm holding up here and we go, oh, you want the blue car? Oh, the blue car? Here's the blue car. Okay. So next time, maybe they'll ask for the blue car because they've repeated it. I got eye contact, and we've increased that attention, which is needed. We need to increase attention in order to do everything. Hold a conversation with somebody. You have to be able to attend to them, not, hear what else is going on. So neurologically, it's making connections in there that increases their ability then to attend longer or to have that focus, which then is all about connecting with other people. Bringing those.
I would love to know the studies of, like doing eye contact from birth to 3, like teaching that attention training, because we live in a world that's hyper distracted. And like, I will literally tell my 10-year-old something, and 2 minutes later, I'll say, remember when I told you that? No, you responded. How do you not remember that I taught that I told you that? Like, I know you were paying attention to your phone while I was talking to you.
Yeah. No, okay. So if think about, if you are looking as an adult at your phone and reading an email or trying to look at your calendar, and somebody is telling you something. Now, there are a lot of people, a lot of people can multitask, okay? But to attend and focus on this, and attend and really focus and listen on this, is really, I'm not Impossible. Okay. So if you're thinking about your child, because I said I would do that with my son too. Did you hear me? Because I don't think so, because you're looking at your phone. Okay. So if they're not, they're not. And so my like a strategy suggestion is, if you've told them, they need to repeat back to you what you've said. Then you can know that they've at least heard you. Whether or not it's going to stick is something else, but having that repetition back is huge. And so that might be, a strategy, a suggestion for helping with that.
And speaking of communication, like we've had some discussions in our household about my attention being inside of a conversation, because I also have my nose in a phone. And I've had people of, like, my boyfriend said, oh, I was trying to talk to you and you just don't respond to me. So I left the room, and I'm like, my request is that you say honey or Alicia and get my attention and make me look at you. If it's something that you like, because if I'm in my phone and you start talking to me and now you're mad that I didn't respond or that I didn't something, that it's not fair to either of us, because now your feelings are hurt and I didn't even know you were talking to me because you walked into the room and started talking and I was doing something else to begin with.
I love that. So my sister is the strategic relationship consultant. And so she helps and coaches couples. Her name is Stephanie Mintz at stephaniemintz.com. I'll just give her a plug because what you just said was so beautiful in the realization of how you can make your communication with your partner better, that it wasn't fair, he was mad. So so that was just so great. And I don't know if he received it well, but your realization of I need you to get my attention, this is what I need from you, and because it's not working that way. So that would just be a lovely strategy that my sister would love. I'm gonna have to tell her about it.
Well, and if your sister wants to be on my podcast,
I could have her be on it's funny that because we're both into communication. She's helping couples communicate better. Okay. She's a licensed therapist, but her coaching is all over and virtual as well, because it is more consulting on strategies like me of communication with the adults. I am about the communication of the babies and toddlers with their parents. And a lot of times the parents or the caregivers of the babies and toddlers, there's a lot of problems that arise when you have a new baby and with the couple, and how to raise it and what do we do and that kind of thing. So I often send those couples over to my sister for strategies. And sometimes she's worked with couples and then they've had a baby and she's sent them over to me for strategies. So like I started this whole podcast, communication. Right. I'm about communicating with the birth to 3 population, but our whole world is falling apart because of miscommunication. And I mean, that's like a huge topic. We could just go, right there. But so I feel my part, especially now in this world, and I was going to bring up the COVID babies, the babies that were born during the COVID lockdown. Studies, you said something about studies. Yeah. Studies have shown, are showing that those babies are developmentally behind in their milestones, in their talking, in their social skills, in their eye contact and attention. They're being brought to preschool and they don't know how to talk with one person because they only had the home life for 1 year or 2 years, however that was. So they don't even know why during the lockdown. Because when babies were born and became toddlers during the lockdown, where they were only in their home, the only people they saw were whoever they saw in the home. They don't know So that's the only way they know how to talk to that person. So imagine if you and your son, were in that lockdown and that's what you had. And yes, you could do some speech therapy virtually, but that's the only practice he got. He didn't get to have eye contact with any strangers. He didn't. I have a 4-year-old who's never been to the grocery store because he was in lockdown, and then parents don't want him exposed. So if you think about somebody who's never been to a grocery store. So I asked him, where do you buy eggs? And he said, the egg store, the hat store. He doesn't know so he doesn't know a fire station. I said, where do the fire trucks go? He doesn't know a fire station. So lack of exposure and experiences, that's what it's all about. So I am making sure you're having experiences with your babies and toddlers, because that's how they're learning. Different experiences in the world, exposure to other people, other things. I mean, literally in your house, not seeing a restaurant, not seeing anything, and then being let out and expected to just be like, hey, world, here I am. And the preschoolers are like hiding behind their parents and cowering and doesn't have nothing because they don't know how. It's a skill that we have taken for granted because we've never had this before, but the studies are showing absolutely children, they don't know how to talk to other people other than who was their core. They don't know how to communicate. And so that's where I help anyways, but now with COVID babies, and if we don't get them caught up, they're behind throughout, socially, academically, and they're just behind. In fact, the milestones of development of sounds and words, they've changed them. They've actually changed them so that they are later now because of COVID. So in other words, when you were supposed to produce a B at 1.5, now I'm making these numbers up because so don't quote me on these numbers, but now we're not expected to have a B until 2. So that development, so it's actually changed because they're so behind. So it is, I call it an epidemic. It's very, very, very serious. And so anybody who's listening, who's maybe not realizing that your baby or toddler is behind, or they are, and you don't know what to do and where to go for help, babybloomingmoments.com. I am one resource that I would love to help you bring these skills. A lot of it is all those pre-verbal skills I'm talking about: eye contact, attention, being able to listen. So all of those skills, and then whatever was happening in the house, those parents were working or they were doing this and that. So it's not like they were there to just have the connections with the babies and toddlers. They were figuring out this chaotic. And then if they have an older one that was in school and has to be home on the Zoom, that baby and toddler, so it was just back. So I call the lost population. People have talked about COVID, about, what's happened in the grammar school and the high school, and they're behind, and Zoom was awful for them. And it was, and I'm not taking that away, but nobody's really paying attention and thinking about, what about those infants and babies and toddlers during that pandemic time? They didn't get those skills that they need. Those are skills, and those neurons were not connecting. Those nerves weren't developing. So that's my bandwagon on that.
I knew that there was ramifications of COVID that we haven't even addressed yet. Like I knew that there was going to be something, but I didn't, I wouldn't have thought, like, obviously this is your specialty. So you're seeing it, you're seeing how it's being affected. And I
studies on my website. If anybody, on my website, I do have I do have studies on there that is showing this, that the studies by Harvard, I believe, or, I mean, so true studies that, and I did call it back a couple years ago. I said, oh my gosh, so that we're going to have like an epidemic or a syndrome of these babies that are delayed from, and indeed the studies are showing that. So they need help. They and the parents often, they don't necessarily know what to do. Some might, and that's great. We know, or we should know, especially here in California, we have something called First Five, and it's a lot of commercials about talk, read, sing to your children. If you're listening from outside of California and you don't know about that, it's real important that's coming out. And that's all me. I'm like, oh, talk, read, sing. But it's not just doing those things, it's how you're doing those things that's going to make the difference. And I can teach you how. It's not like we talked about, it's not just talking about, hey, there's a blue car, blah, blah, blah. It's how you are talking to them, how you're reading. So my book, All Done Binky, about weaning off of a pacifier. It's very important for speech and language development. Having a pacifier too long could affect the speech and language development process. So I want to start weaning start to think about it about 6 months, 8 months, a year. So my book has very, very simple pictures, simple language for that age group. So it's just like we were talking about, as you're talking to them, you also have to read appropriate level stories with them at their age level. So All Done Binky, it's available on Amazon, as well as barnesandnoble.com. So how you read to the baby is going to make a difference. It's not just about reading the story, especially at very young ages. It's more about labeling the items on the pages, having them build up their vocabulary. So that's another great strategy that I'm giving away already.
And the phrase "all done" is my favorite phrase from when he was little. When I learned that, I was like, it was a godsend, because it was hard to transition, for me to transition, for him to transition. Like it was hard. But All Done made it so much easier.
Yeah, that's a phrase. Yeah, so I was going to go with Bye Bye Binky. But there are other books that are titled Bye Bye. It's had a little better flair to it. So there are other books that are titled that, and I didn't want it to get lost. And when I use, I say all done for things. I use bye bye for people or animals. But when it's an object, a lot of people say, oh, bye bye, phone, or bye bye bottle. For me as a speech and language pathologist, we're all done with that. We're all done with the blocks, not bye bye blocks. Right. We're all done with the blocks. We're all done with this. So we are going to be all done with that binky or bonky or passy or whatever you call it.
Yeah. Is there a piece of advice that you want to share with moms?
I do. The most important during these first 3 years is that you are involved, you're present, you're providing different experiences, which does not mean you are going to Disneyland. When I say an experience is walking down the street. An experience is going to I used to go to Home Depot. My son would love to look at chandeliers and different chandeliers and light, the way the lights shimmer off of them. And Home Depot had a whole section of them. So we'd go to Home Depot so we could look at the lights. I often go to the pet store. That's a great place for language. You don't have to have a pet. You don't have to buy anything, but it's an experience. There's so much language there. So you can go to the library, you can go to the park. Those are experiences, but think outside. Going to the grocery store when you don't even have to shop. I love going through the fruits and vegetables section. There's so many colors, textures, smells. It's actually okay to take the fruit and put it back. So, because that's, we're looking for it. So let them squeeze it. So full of language, experiences. is what these babies and toddlers need from you in the best way that you can. And I can help you give those great experiences.
I really appreciate what you're doing and wish that you'd been around 10 years ago. My son is amazing. He's, he's very intelligent, very like he overcame, he once he started talking, he didn't ever stop.
Okay, I was wondering, I needed to know the end of that. If
Right?
once he was in speech therapy, did he kind of fly?
Oh,
And that's where I was like, did they teach you what to do? That's why I kind of went on that tangent of
yeah.
it's so important, because when you said, oh, I realized that, I was wondering if it was something the speech therapist educated you on so that you could be, aware or talk about it with them, because that piece is so important. It's not just working directly with the child.
I'm pretty, she was very impactful for me. I was always in the room with her, and so
Right.
I imitated what she did. She gave us flashcards to work on at home, and not just of items, but of people. And she was, I think her name was Gina, but she was phenomenal.
Good.
So he would, I mean, today he's very into science. He was telling me today about how someone was using the moon to prove that the earth is not flat. And I'm like, flat earthers, no offense to anybody who's listening. I hope flat earthers who are listening, but like if the earth was flat, wouldn't we fall off at some point? And my son was like, yeah, they think that there's a wall of ice. And I was like, okay, now they're just making stuff up. Like, but he was telling me how
but that's so great that he could talk to you all about it. And that's great. And that's so key too, is that if parents and moms, if you do think, if your gut is telling you something's not right, my child is just not quite, go with your gut. Even if your pediatrician says, wait, this is very important. This is the advice, is go with your gut. You need to follow that, because you're often most times right. And the earlier you get help, the better. So having it at 2, and when he went, so then he could be done and he could fly and be done and not have to deal with that. So early intervention is so key.
I was genuinely blessed because my sister was in school learning about autism, and so she's got her master's degree and works with children with autism now. But she was like, she was pushing me, as I'm using that in a nice way though.
Yeah.
That she said, they should have, by 18 months, they should have 5 words. And by 2 years, you'll probably know the answer to how many words they should have. I don't remember. But every year that they're beyond, that they're not hitting the milestone, they're getting further and further behind. Right. And so if at 18 months, he only has 1 word, and by 2 years, he's supposed to have 200 or whatever it is.
That is very good.
Okay. So 200, so I remember 200 words by 2 years, and he's only got 50. Well, by 3 years, he's supposed to have 5,000 or whatever it is. And then they're further and further behind. And so you want to, like, the thing that I hear a lot is, I don't want my child to have the stigma.
Right.
And it's like, well, what's more important to you, your child flourishing or the stigma that's going away anyway? Right. So
and yes, and that stigma, nobody really knows about that stigma. It's not like they've got it tattooed on their face. They're not walking around with their peers knowing what that is, or having the teachers know that is extremely helpful, because then they know they need a little bit more than another child. So it should be looked at, and I know it's looked at as, it's a label, and they don't want them labeled. That label, that helps them.
Right.
It's helpful. And so we want the help. I'm glad you brought that up. So important.
Yeah. My son's on the spectrum. He was diagnosed on the spectrum. Okay. I have not told a single teacher, I don't think.
Okay.
He has an IEP. I've never told a teacher, because they haven't needed it. If they've
I'll tell you what, they also might already know.
They might know.
Let you know. And they maybe, just don't feel the need to talk about it. But probably they know, they should know, actually, every teacher should know what IEP every child has. and what a diagnosis is. But like you said, so I'm telling you, if those are a good school and a good teacher, they do know. But all these years, it's helped him, not hindered.
Correct.
Right.
And one of his teachers, I think she knew, she never said anything, but she asked me, she's like, he's very distracted. Would I would encourage you to send him to school with something he can squish in his hand. And he was so excited to be able to have, we called him fidgets, even though fidget spinner is a thing. He was not allowed a fidget spinner, but he was allowed to have a fidget thing. And when he was given the permission, everything was so much better for him, for the teacher, for the other students. And so this year I told his teacher, I said, his last teacher allowed him to have some fidgets as long as they were quiet and not distracting other students. And so he's happy and he hasn't even brought up that he wants them or needs them or anything this year. So it was
okay. So he's not having them so he's not having them this year, and he's not needing them this year.
Yeah, has permission, but he hasn't needed them.
So that's huge.
Yeah,
that is huge progress. That makes me so excited. That and because he was allowed, and they knew, and he was allowed to have that, it helped him progress and get that. And that's where the focus is. That's where the focus is that the help that they need with that label, if you want to, I hate that word.
Right.
It's who they are, and they need help, and there's nothing wrong with that, and we want to encourage that.
It's been something that's helped guide me as a parent. That's how I've used his diagnosis, is that it's guided me as a parent. And as I work with his teachers, I'm very involved in the school. Like until the pandemic, I was helping in the classroom. And, I think that it's something that's given me bumper rails as a parent. And
how do you think, can you give an example of how you think it's guided you?
Because I've done a little bit of research on what autism is and how it works with him, and so I understand when he gets angry or when he's freaking out about something. I'm like, okay, is he overstimulated? That's not a word I would have known other than having a diagnosis, and he gets overstimulated. So that would be the best example.
I love that. And so guidance and understanding, and so it's allowed you to have a reason that your son is tantruming. It's not just to get at you, and looking for what that could be to try to, I love that. I've loved talking to you. Well, it's beautiful. That's great. And being open, and that's why, I'm sharing again with parents, not being afraid of that label and going down that path, but embracing it like you did, which I know is so much easier for me to say when I don't have a child, going through that, but embracing it and learning, because then I bet that understanding helped ground you more, so you could be there then for him, instead of you also getting all, off the fly. That's great.
Because I remember before the diagnosis, I was like, what is wrong with this kid?
Right.
And I say it jokingly because I remember something fell off of a table and he just flipped out. And I understand now, because he's rigid. He wants everything to be the way that it's supposed to be. And so I've been able to parent around his rigidness, because it's he's not flexible. He's not as flexible as other kids. Some kids are just go with the flow. He's very this is how it's supposed to be.
So your house can be more calm and more flowing because you're accommodating his needs, right? Because you understand the underlying of what the needs are. And so you've now created a much happier, livable home, having that understanding. is so huge. If you got, I work at a preschool out of St. John's Hospital in Santa Monica here. And I work the preschool, 2 of the classrooms that I work in. It's called a therapeutic preschool. So every child who's 2, 3, and 4 years old already has a mental health disorder diagnosis. It could be oppositional defiant disorder, ADHD, with PTSD. We've got 2 and 3-year-olds coming in with PTSD because of drug exposure, home life, domestic violence, what is being the experiences that they're having in their home and around is creating their behaviors of biting, aggression, defiance. And so now, and lower communication skills. And that's why I'm there as a speech and language therapist to help them communicate their feelings and what's going on to be able to have less behaviors. So having the teaching that, and we work very closely with the parents on having them have an understanding beyond behind the behavior, so that they're not just also flipping out and going, God, you're around. And then we're not dealing with it. And you know, and that's it. Learning the strategies of what is going on, how to calm them. Maybe that child actually needs a hug. That's the last thing the parent would think of, you know, when they're flipping out. But I've seen it in preschool. He's flipping out. And the teacher goes, do you need a hug? He's like, yeah. He came over and like, that's what he needed instead of that full-blown tantrum. So knowing the but having an understanding of what's happening is so key, of parents being involved, understanding, educated, especially during these young years.
I love that. And I think you've said where they can find you, but where can our listeners find you?
Thank you. Yes, I am at babybloomingmoments.com. You can email me, michelle@babybloomingmoments.com. You can call me because I love to talk, and it's a very unique company. There isn't anything like it. I'm not teaching diapering and feeding. Once you've got that down, I'm teaching the next step. So it's very unique. So people aren't looking for me, which is hard with my company. So I'm so glad that you have listeners now that can find me. So you can talk to me at 424-226-2206. I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Baby Blooming Moments, and on LinkedIn at Michelle Mitz. And All Done Binky is available on Amazon. Those are all my places that you can find me. And I hope to hear from you. I really am passionate about helping grow a better world. If I might sound so bold, but it starts babies. That's where it starts. And we need a kinder, softer world right now.
Yeah. I think I saw a quote on Facebook somewhere that said, the people that are bold enough to try to change the world are the ones that do, or something along those lines. And it was very impactful. So I appreciate your mission.
Yes. So my quote that I like to end with is, some say it's never too late. I say it's never too early.
Love it. So thank you again. We'll have another episode of Imperfect Momming for you next week. And until then, keep healing. Bye, guys.
Thank you for tuning in to Imperfect Momming. It's time for us to step up and realize that our power is not in trying to shape our children. Our power lies in shaping ourselves into the people we want our children to model themselves after. Don't just do it for your kids. Do it for yourself. When you become a more self-aware, compassionate, and confident person, you and everyone around you benefit. For more information about me and my work, visit AliciaLyons.com. That's ALYSIALYONS.com. See you next time.